I'm Marvin Bell. I'm reading from Port Townsend, Washington, in the United States. Yesterday, Robert Peake hosted Transatlantic poetry reading. My part of it was muffled because of technical problems on my end, so I'm going to try again. Today is September 8th. We did our muffled version on September 7th. So here we go. I'm going to begin with a poem called White Clover. In Iowa City, Iowa, where my wife Dorothy and I lived most of the time, those neighborhoods were all farmlands at one time, and the clovers left over from the feed. So this is called White Clover. It first appeared way back in 1984 in a book with a very long title was Drawn by Stones, by Earth, by Things That Have Been in the Fire. This is White Clover. Once when the moon was out about 3/4, and the fireflies or the stars of backyards were out about 3/4, and about 3/4 of all the lights in the neighborhood were on because people can be at home. I took a not-so-innocent walk out among the lawns, navigating by the light of lights, and there were many hundreds of moons on the lawns, where before there was only polite grass. These were moons on long stems, their long stems giving their greenness to the center of each flower, and the light giving its whiteness to the tops of the petals. I could say it was light from stars touch the tops of flowers, and no doubt something heavenly reaches what grows outdoors, and the heads of men who go hatless. But I like to think we have a world right here, and a life that isn't death. So I don't say it's better to be right here. I say this is where many hundreds of core green moons, gigantic to my eye, rose because men and women had sown green grass, and flowered to my eye in man-made light, and to some would be as fire in the body, and to others a light in the mind, over all their property. Now I'll read a poem to Dorothy. This appeared first in 1977 in a book titled Stars Which See, Stars Which Do Not See. To Dorothy. You're not beautiful exactly. You are beautiful inexactly. You let a weed grow by the mulberry, and a mulberry grow by the house. So close, in the personal quiet of a windy night, it brushes the wall and sweeps away the day till we sleep. A child said it, and it seemed true. Things that are lost are all equal. But it isn't true. If I lost you, the air wouldn't move, nor the tree grow. Someone would pull the weed, my flower. The quiet wouldn't be yours. If I lost you, I'd have to ask the grass to let me sleep. My father passed away when I was fairly young, and so when I began to write poetry, of course, father poems would show up now and then, and each time I would think it was the last one. Eventually, I wrote the one I'm going to read now, which, as you will see, pretty much had to be the last one. It first appeared in a book that had a title that the series required, a Marvin Bell reader, back in 1994. The poem is called Ending with a Line from Lear. The last line in this poem is a line that the old king speaks in Shakespeare's play over the body of his daughter Cordelia. Ending with a line from Lear. I will try to remember. It was light. It was also dark in the grave. I could feel how dark it was, how black it would be without my father, when he was gone. But he was not gone, not yet. He was only a corpse, and I could still touch him that afternoon, earlier the same afternoon. This is the one thing that scares me, losing my father. I don't want him to go. I am a young man. I will never be older. I am wearing a tie and a watch. The sky, gray, hangs over everything. Today, the sky has no curve to it and no end. He is deep into his mission. He has business to attend to. He wears a tie but no watch. I will skip a lot of what happens next. Then the moment comes. Everything has been said, and the wheels start to turn. They roll, the straps unwind, and the coffin begins to descend into the awful damp, into the black center of the earth. I am being left behind. The center of my body sinks down into the cold fire of the grave. My father's grave. I will never again. Never, 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 never. I'm going to read a poem titled Bagram Afghanistan, 2002. The event in this poem became the main event in a movie called Taxi to the Dark Side. In my case, the poem first appeared in a book called Mars Being Red, which was published in 2007. This is Bagram, Afghanistan, 2002. The interrogation celebrated spikes and cuffs. The inky blue that invades a blackened eye. The eyeball that bulges like a radish. That incarnadine only blood can create. They asked the young taxi driver questions he could not answer, and they beat his legs until he could no longer kneel on their command. They chained him by the wrists to the ceiling. They may have admired the human form then, stretched out, for the soldiers were also athletes, trained to shout in unison and be buddies. By the time his legs had stiffened, a blood clot was already tracing a vein into his heart. They said he was dead when they cut him down, but he was dead the day they arrested him. Are they feeding the prisoners gravel now, to make them skillful orators as they confess? Here stands Demosthenes in the military court, unable to form the words, "My country. What shall we do? We who are at war but are asked to pretend we are not. Do we need another naive apologist to crown us with cliches that would turn the grass brown above a grave?" They called the carcass Mr. Dilawar. They believed he was innocent. Their orders were to step on the necks of the prisoners, to break their will, to make them say something in a sleep-deprived delirium of fractures, rising to the occasion, or, like Mr. Dilawar, leaving his few possessions and his body. I've written all kinds of poems over a very long time. Some are stranger than others. So I'm going to read a couple that are stranger than others. This one is called Ashes Poetica. It was first published in a book called Rampant in 2004. Ashes Poetica. Concerning a pair of shoes that stands beside the bed, in league with the night, the consorts of sweat and the stone ends of toes, the inaccessible spiders of rooms used only after dark, and the family of things that live between speaking and not speaking. In the room also are a dead ear, a covered eye, and a stage trod upon by the shades of experienced actors. A body lying crushed against the sheets, a pillow imprisoning a head, medicinal flowers in dark water, and then the corpse turns suddenly, so that the dead ear comes alive, and the cover of the eye is revealed to be thin skin. Corpuscles of light descend from darkness randomly, quietly, and are able to penetrate the exposed eye, where they fall into bits and pieces, trying to form a picture. But it is not to be permitted. Even when the shoes stop breathing and grow cold, even though the spider has gone deep into the corner to try to pull down the wall, even though eyes watch which could not see in light. No matter what, nothing is to be taken from sleep, unless it has been burned. And none are to be remembered from among the players, even though they may attempt memorable speeches and strike dramatic poses. For such is the destitution of the body, that its destiny must be dispersed by any means necessary, even if it means a day is to be accompanied by the clamoring of a pestilent chorus from beneath a sunken sea. And the night is to be swallowed by sackcloth, as the feet each day are swallowed by shoes. And because of fate, someone has had to invent fire. Penultimately, like they say, I'm going to read a poem. It's in a form that people have come to call the Dead Man poems. The Dead Man poems come partly out of an old Zen admonition to live as if you were already dead. They follow an unusual form. They come at you in 2 parts each, and the parts themselves are titled. Also, the poetic line is a full sentence. In other words, every line is a sentence, every sentence is a line. The first part, this particular one is called The Book of the Dead Man, and in parentheses it says Conversation. I first wrote a book called The Book of the Dead Man, then another one called Ardor, but if you look closely on the cover, you can see it says The Book of the Dead Man, Volume 2. And some of these poems in this form have been scattered here and there in other books. This one is from the latest book from 2011, which is titled Vertigo, The Living Dead Man Poems. The dead man is not me, but he knows a lot about me. He's not a persona, but a sensibility, an overarching sensibility. Also, if you can get your mind around this, he's alive and dead at the same time. We're having some fun with the concept of time here. So this is the Book of the Dead Man, Conversation. Here comes the Zen admonition, live as if you were already dead. Part 1, about the dead man's conversations. The dead man hath spoken with Matthew Arnold about ignorant armies. He hath cautioned Keats on the isolate love of beauty. If there were ever Grecian odes on the shore, they were smashed in the general onslaught. Like sandcastles adrift in the idea of architecture, like bas reliefs planed to the texture of papyrus, like rubber in acid, like repositories of beauty, they did not outlast the idea of them. The dead man is of a mind and a mind too, and his exploration has been in the places where an idea may fit. It has been a long thrill in the dark for the dead man and friends. The dead man is on the side of art, but also on the side of artlessness. Absent the blank page, the word must forever be muddled. The words can be true only to one another, like Arnold's lovers, the ideal. Well, says the dead man, what have we here? It seems the dead man has caught the words in a compromising position. This verbal interruptus is a quiver from circling an invisible vase where the lovers have been trying to catch one another. Must poetry forever be anticipation and delayed gratification? The dead man has been talking with T.S. Eliot about escaping one's personality, which he has. The dead man, too, which he has. And then comes the line, and with Wallace Stevens about the mind and the act of finding what will suffice, which he has. The dead man, too, can write the tautologies that cloak war and torture. But he no longer cottons to the aesthetic tilt of a head, the legendary voice, the prophetic boombox, or starlit ego. Why should the dead man use up his life in the usual ways? The dead man's poetry is not stone-cold soup. Part 2, more about the dead man's conversations. It was cold in the coffee house where the dead man met the editor. The dead man had asked Henry James if there could be two congruent points of view. He had challenged William James to a bout of automatic writing. The dead man won the game of exquisite corpse when he folded the paper twice. He wrote faster and faster, but he could not get down everything. The engineers were of a mind to map a brain, an empty brain. When the dead man and the editor met, it was in the early years of the apocalypse. That no one could conceive of everything had given the lie to prophecy. It was a time when string theory was unraveling, when relativity had become absolute, when Gurdjieff's all and everything had subsumed the cults, clans, castes, tribes, and schools. The dead man's papers had been overwritten. It was up to the editor to select a sample. The dead man has lived among remnants, shards, fragments, doubles, and replicas, among lucky error and deliberate effect. Like a snake, the dead man molts, leaving a whole skin now passé. How shall the editor edit the seamless, if not with scissors? The dead man has been talking to James Joyce about not being there when his words end up new. The dead man has been talking to Galileo about the law of falling bodies, which applies. How shall the editor edit the perpetual or eternal, if not with scissors? The dead man's world is kaleidoscopic. It turns without stopping. Say you knew him, but not what he was thinking. And finally, I'm going to read a very short poem called Around Us. This one also appeared in 2004 in a book called Rampant. This is the poem Around Us. We need some pines to assuage the darkness when it blankets the mind. We need a silvery stream that banks as smoothly as a plane's wing, and a worn bed of needles to pad the rumble that fills the mind, and a blur or two of a wild thing that sees and is not seen. We need these things between appointments, after work, and, if we keep them, then someone, someday, lying down after a walk and supper, with the fire hole wet down, the whole night sky set at a particular time without numbers or hours, will cause a little sound of thanks, a zipper or a snap, to close round the moment and the thought of whatever good we did. That's it. Bye.